The Great Parking Lot Protest of 1992, an Oregon college, spring semester. Todd had been in a foul mood for months. His fiancée was also a student at the college, living in the women's dorm, but that wasn't enough. He wanted to be married. He wanted out of the dorms, out of the rules, out of the ridiculous meal plans and curfews. Every day between now and graduation felt like a prison sentence. The men's dorm sat on a hill overlooking campus, and above it, the gravel parking lot stretched like a battlefield, scarred with tire tracks and ankle-deep puddles. Every step through that mess sent a splatter up pant legs. Shoes were ruined. Carpets in dorm rooms looked like crime scenes. So, on one particularly dreary Oregon evening, Todd burst into Steve's room, his face a mask of frustration. The room was packed with students lounging on couches, sprawled over beds, and perched on desks. Steve had just won a heated round of foosball against Ryan, and Nathan, as usual, sat back and observed the chaos. Todd threw his muddy shoe onto the floor. "I swear, if I have to scrape mud off my Adidas one more time, why don't they pave that parking lot? I'm sick and tired of tracking in mud." A few heads nodded. "Yeah, me too," Ryan muttered. "Preach," added a sophomore from the back. The agreement spread like wildfire. Frustration turned to indignation. Indignation turned to action. Soon someone, probably Tyler, who loved mischief, suggested a protest. And not just any protest. They would blockade the employee parking lot in front of the administration building. Nathan didn't say much, he never did, but he also didn't stop it. He just smirked and sipped his soda as the plan took shape. By midnight, whispers had spread through the dorm. Car keys jangled in pockets. One by one, vehicles rolled down the hill, parking bumper to bumper in a neat, unbroken line in front of the administration building. By 2 a.m., the work was done. They had formed a perfect blockade, an iron curtain of used Hondas, ancient Buicks, and at least one beat-up Ford Pinto. The dorm erupted into hushed celebration. They had made history. Then morning chaos. At 8 a.m., the administration staff arrived to find their parking lot transformed into a used car dealership with nowhere to park. Confused professors circled the block, gripping their coffee cups like lifelines. The campus buzzed. Students gathered in clusters, whispering and pointing. Then came the real moment of triumph. The board of directors, in town for a quarterly meeting, arrived to witness the scene. Wealthy donors in tailored suits, deans clutching briefcases, all forced to walk. Walk! From the distant overflow lot. The president of the college, a distinguished man who prided himself on order, stood with his hands on his hips, staring at the blockade. "What?" he finally muttered. "What in the world is this?" By noon, everyone knew. Students spoke in hushed tones about the parking lot protest, and it worked. A few weeks later, the dean called a mandatory dorm meeting. The RAs and most of the protesters sat in a classroom, arms crossed, waiting for whatever speech was coming. The dean sighed and leaned forward. "We understand that communication is important. You all clearly had concerns." The guys nodded. "The administration wants you to know that we hear you." More nods. "And we'd like to open the floor. What else should we know about?" Silence. Then Ben, who always had a joke and an angle, casually raised his hand. "Toilet paper," he said. The dean blinked. "I'm sorry?" Ben cleared his throat. "Can we get softer toilet paper? The stuff in the dorms is basically industrial-grade sandpaper." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. The dean rubbed his temples. I suppose we can look into that." And that, as it turned out, was the real victory. For the rest of the semester, the toilet paper was softer, like real toilet paper, not the kind that made grown men weep. And when they returned in the fall, they discovered something else. The parking lot was paved. Smooth, glorious asphalt stretched where mud once ruled. The only problem? The toilet paper was back to its original, sandpaper-like horror. It seemed progress came at a price. But in the annals of college history, the men's dorm would always be remembered for two things. They got the parking lot paved. And, for one brief, shining moment, they knew the bliss of soft toilet paper.